I'll just tell you about some of our campaigning work. Really, really pleased that government has listened so well to everything that Chambers of Commerce have had to say at the moment, particularly around furloughing. That was as a direct result of Chamber campaigning, the coronavirus job retention scheme. And now, of course, they've announced that they're going to allow some flexibility in that from August. We're actually asking them to bring that forward because we know there's a lot of businesses would like to start bringing people back and start bringing them back part-time, but of course can't do so if they're not going to have that part of their wage covered. We also pleased that we highlighted that the self-employed were struggling, and out came the self-employed income support scheme. We highlighted issues with CBILS, the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme, and sure enough, the bounce back loan scheme was announced. We're still really pushing hard to get support for company directors who've fallen through the gaps where they've paid themselves through dividend or repayment of company directors' loans rather than through the PAYE scheme. So we're not going to give up on that. And also there are some businesses that have fallen outside of the rate scheme. So again, we've pushed for an extension on the discretionary grant scheme, which has been announced. It sounds like a huge sum of money, £617 million. But when you split that amongst the country, that means Plymouth City Council only got 2 million. And if you say that there are an average of £10,000 per loan, we're only talking about a handful of businesses that are going to end up being supported by that. So again, we're pushing really hard. What we want is clarity for businesses so they know how to return to business, what support is going to be available, and we want that to be phased so that the support doesn't just switch off like a light switch, but that there's a sort of handover period as business comes back. So what we really need from you, and this is really important, is we need real life examples of what you need to be able to return to business safely. So whether that's financial support, practical support, whatever you need, I need to know those examples because we're being asked by government to provide those. And although I give lots of anecdotal evidence, there's nothing more powerful than actual testimonials and actual real life cases. And in fact, one of the cases we provided to government landed on the desk of Rishi Sunak and led to a direct response, direct change to government policy. So please do keep those examples coming. I think that's enough from me. We've got far more interesting, more eloquent speakers, no pressure to the three of them, but on this subject, I think they hopefully will be a lot better than me, and I shall be signing up with Alexis afterwards to improve my presentation skills. So without further ado, I will hand over to Kevin Briscoe from Briscoe PR, who, if you haven't already, please unmute yourself. And I think Kevin's going to share his screen and has some slides for us, and then we will catch up again afterwards. Kevin, I'll give you a sort of 2-minute warning. We're coming to the end. I know you've got to rattle through some slides, but that'll keep everyone awake and interested, and we'll see you all in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. Right, I'm just going to share my screen now. And hopefully that's working and you can all see that all right. Stuart, could you just give me a thumbs up? You can see that okay? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Right, so thank you very much everyone, like I say, for joining us. A quick introduction to PR and what PR is. First of all, everything that you do and everything that you say affects your reputation online and offline. So public relations is all about the business of reputation and the reputation of your business. What do you stand for? What's your ethos? How do you go about doing your business? And how do you tell the stories that come out of that, that illustrate what sort of a business you are? Not just the products that you produce or the services that you provide, but what sort of a business are you and what's at the heart of your business? So public relations is the business of managing and developing those reputations through managed communications. And critically, it's about developing relationships with all of your stakeholders. Stakeholders is just a bit of a jargon term, but what it really means is they're your customers, They're the people who could be your customers, the potential customers that are out there. It could be your employees, it could be the media, and all sorts of other people. So how do you really start to develop those relationships? PR and public relations generally is not something that happens overnight. It's a sort of thing that's done better. It's little and often, shall we say. Doing a little bit of PR on a regular basis is much more successful than thinking you can just turn your reputation around just overnight or within a week or within a fortnight, because it's impossible. Reputation takes years and years and years to cultivate and develop, and PR, in my view, is a bit like adding sheets of paper to a pile of sheets of paper, and each one is a piece of your reputation, and a little bit of PR keeps on adding to that piece of your reputation. So how do you go about telling those stories? Telling your stories of your business, whatever it is your business does or whatever it stands for, delivering that information, the facts, the details, and so on, through various different channels. Traditionally, that's been the media, so print, newspapers, magazines, for printed versions and online versions, broadcasters, online, social media, video, websites, and so on. All of these different channels are all channels for you to be able to use to be able to get your stories out there to your target audience. And I'll come on to, in a little bit more detail in a little while, how you define who your audience is. But strictly speaking, it's those stakeholders, the people you really want to communicate to. Years ago, PR was a bit more hit and miss, shall we say, where you would push information out there to the mass media and hope that the right target audience, the people who really mattered to you as a business, and hope that they would receive that information. These days, you can be much more forensic about your approach and make sure that you are delivering the information you need to deliver directly to your audience. It's got to be interesting, it's got to be engaging, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while, and based on a strategy, crucially. So have a plan for what you're going to do. So to PR your way out of the coronavirus, things for you to start considering. Have you been maintaining communication with your customers and the outside world throughout this crisis, whether you've closed or not? I've been talking to a lot of businesses over the past couple of months about making sure they maintain their communication. It's really important that you keep that communication going, whether you're closed or not. You want to keep that information going about your business as much as possible. Keep on building and building that reputation so that when we emerge from lockdown, as we are starting slowly but surely to do now, you've done some of that background work. Think about how the crisis has changed the way your business operates, what that means to your customers, and what success might look like for you now and in the future. What sort of thing do you want people to know about your business? And that should be the sort of thing you're thinking about in terms of telling your story. And your customers will have changed as well. Their behaviours will have changed, their attitudes will have changed, and their approach to doing business with you will have changed. And that doesn't just mean consumers. This also applies if you're in the business-to-business environment as well. So have a think about what that means for how you do business yourself, and how are you communicating that information? How are you telling people, and what are you telling them? This is just an illustration of why stories are important. Every single brand, every single business has a story to tell, and even more so as we're emerging from lockdown. The important thing here is to define exactly what the key part of your message is, what your key story is, and it's that bit in the middle of the diagram there. There's a whole load of information that you might want to say, but what is actually really relevant to your customer or your potential customers? Really think very clearly, carefully about that. And remember that your customers are not all the same. They're very different. They want to be communicated with differently. So you should be investigating using a real broad mix of communications, various different channels, and making sure that you cater for all of your customers, no matter what their needs are. So, you know, for some, social media channels might be the best approach. For others, newsprint. And for others, maybe it's some other online channels, like through your website or blogging or whatever else it might be. Or maybe it's hard copy, or maybe it's a newsletter, all sorts of things like that. But you need to make sure that you've really defined what it is that your customers want to see and what it is your customers want to read, and make sure you're delivering that for them and for all of them. Really importantly, as we start to emerge from lockdown here, make sure you've got a plan. It's your comms strategy for emerging from the crisis. So what is your plan? What is it you want to achieve? What is it you want to do? And what sort of stories can you build into that strategy? What are your objectives? What is it that you want to achieve at the end of it? Show your face. People buy from people, and it really does help to make sure that you are really being upfront there and representing your business, making sure that you're out there telling your story and being the person who is the figurehead for you and your business, and being really clear about your messaging and what you've got to say. Use different formats of content to get those messages across. So think about whether you can use video or blogs. Change up your social media posts. Think about doing some paid for promotions or advertising, social media advertising. Think about those stories you can get in newspapers. If you've never done it before, now is definitely the time. Newspapers and magazines crying out for content at the moment. If you're a business that can tap into one of those publications, then really you should do it. The number of publications we've spoken to who are crying out for content at the moment, really good opportunity for that. And repeat yourself. Research shows someone needs to see a piece of information at least 3 times to digest it. So don't be afraid of repeating some of your key messages and some of the things that you say when you're saying it, because people will need to get used to what it is that you've got to say. But it's really important that you're listening to those people that are important to you, your customers and your potential customers, and that you're really engaging with them, because that's what should be driving your activity. And finally, on this particular slide, evaluate, measure, and change. So if you're doing any sort of communication at all, you must measure its impact, evaluate it, see what has worked and what hasn't worked. Because if it's not working, stop doing it and do something differently. Do something else that does start to work, but keep measuring it even if it does work, because it'll work for a little while and then it'll stop working and then you need to change again. So it's really important that you're constantly evaluating and measuring everything that you do. Some key tips here. So develop some key messages for your business that you can use right across all of your communications activity. So 3 or 4 really key messages that really sum up your business and sum up what sort of a business you are, what you stand for, what your ethos is, and what sort of and how you would like to portray your business to your audience. You think about your audience, talked about that a little earlier. Make sure you've had a real good chance to consider who your audience is. What do they look like? Are they generally 50 years plus? Are they generally under 25? Are they male or female or both? And all sorts of other points about those people. Think about that, because they will need to be communicated with in different ways depending on who they are, and so on. Find interesting stories in your business, turn them into engaging news releases for online and print. So there's always good stories going on within a business, whether it's with your colleagues or your employees, and there's good opportunities there to turn some of those things into news releases. Make sure that it's something that's going to be of news value, but send it in, and you'll be surprised at how many of you will be able to get some good coverage for some of your stories that help to reinforce your brand. I think it's really important you plan your social media. With a lot of brands that we work with, we plan their social media content, their corporate content, over the space of 2 weeks or a month at a time. But planning your content out means you can ensure that you're being consistent around your content. Get good photos to go with it. If you haven't got good photos, use a photographer. Get good video, and if you can't do your own video, then use a videographer if you can, if you've got the budget for that. But plan out your content over a period of time so you can make sure that you're being consistent and you're delivering all of your key messages regularly. Blogging, use your news updates page on your website to tell your story your way. A perfect way of you being able to publish information for yourself. So you should definitely be using blogs just to write some of your news updates and get those out to people through your own website. And obviously make sure you're monitoring and responding to queries on social media. Engagement is the absolutely crucial point here, a crucial issue. Be more engaging. It's a bit like being told to be more attractive. How do you be more engaging? Very difficult, but what you want to do is make sure that your content is interesting. Over the past 2 months, I've seen a huge amount of content come out from brands and businesses right across the country. A lot of it's saying kind of the same sort of thing in kind of the same sort of way. And after a little while, it's a bit like seeing too many high-vis jackets. You become a bit blind to what that information is. So being creative about what it is that you've got to say and how you deliver that message is crucial. There's obviously, you've got to think about the tone, you've got to think the time and the place. Is it right? You know, you don't want to be frivolous necessarily at certain times, but think about how you could be a little bit more creative. You've got to find a way to cut through the general noise of information that's flowing around out there to make sure that your customers and the people you really want to be engaged with are really seeing what you've got to say. Is there a better way that you can construct the message so that you can get it sent out? And we've recently worked with a local authority who have their hands completely full with managing everything to do with this virus, and they had some information come down from centrally that they had to try and get people more engaged with VE Day a few weeks ago. So we've done some work with them, and we looked at how can we get that message out there to get people more engaged with VE Day. So we worked with a teacher to create homeschooling pack about VE Day. We produced a stay-at-home party pack, including a Spotify playlist and all sorts of stuff like that. Fantastically successful. Council really pleased. Council residents very engaged with the whole project. We got the same message across, but without just issuing a press release or sending out a newsletter or putting something on Facebook. Is there something else that you can do that would make a bit more, that would help to really cut through that noise and get to those people? With your social media, it's crucial, and I say this to a lot of businesses, that it's not just about you. You don't want to, you know, if you go to a party, you don't want to be that person at the party who's in the corner, who's trapped in the corner, sorry, with someone who just talks about themselves all the time. If you're a business and all you do on your social media is just talk about yourself, people are going to get bored and they'll start to switch off your messaging. The whole point of social media when it really got going and the way people use it as individuals is you're sharing information that you think your followers and people who are interested in you might be interested in. And businesses somehow seem to have forgotten that when they've got into dealing with their social media. Yes, of course, you do want to make some of the content about you and what you've got to say and what you've got to offer, but it shouldn't all be about you. So share widely, share often, and really be a part of your community, not just your geographical community, but your business community as well.
1 minute, please, Kevin.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm literally down to the last couple of slides. So measurement, really important. I touched on this earlier. Measure every single thing that you do, because how do you know whether you're being successful or not? You've got to check on social media. They have their own analytics for seeing how successful your posts are being. If it's not being successful, do something differently. Don't just keep making the same mistakes time after time. Review and revisit and think about how you might be able to do it better next time. What worked, what didn't work. Anyone who says on social media they've got the answer to your problems, it's not true. It's not, they don't have the answer. You dip your toe in the water. If it works, you do more of it. If it doesn't work, you do something different. So in conclusion, PR, it's essential to your business. If you're not doing it at the moment, then you really do have to start. And if you don't know where to start, consider outsourcing. But the really key points are: think of your audience at all times, tell engaging stories, engaging and interesting stories, and be the sort of business that you would want to do business with. So think about that really carefully. And finally, if I've rattled through that really quickly, so if anybody wants a copy of that slide deck, no problem at all. Drop me a message after, and I'll email the slide deck over to you, and you can go through it at your own pace. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. And feel free to put your contact details in the chat as well, so that people can pick that up really quickly. So many years ago, I was a police press officer and spokesperson, and in preparation for the interview, I was researching PR, and I asked a friend of mine who's got a PR degree, why PR was important. And he summed it up really nicely. He said, an organization communicates whether it wishes to or not. So it is better to try and control the message and to give your own message as a corporate, fully rounded, thought out message than just words getting out into the media, comms that you don't really realize were being picked up. So I think it's absolutely essential. Thank you, Kevin. Paul, you're going to talk a little bit about web and particularly gathering data. So over to Paul.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see so many familiar faces. And I'm going to try and not repeat anything that Kevin has just said, but that might be a bit impossible because he gave quite a good and thorough presentation then. We run an agency that specializes in inbound marketing. So we look after people's websites, we create content for people's websites. We then help people with content for their social media channels and for email marketing. So in a nutshell, we create content that we think people are going to be interested in and will want to read on your website. And I'm going to give a kind of quick overview of the process that we've been using while we've been working with people over the past couple of months in particular. So as Kevin mentioned, there's been something of an explosion of people creating digital content over the last 2 months. A lot of people have seen this as an opportunity to maybe, okay, we can't have the shop open or whatever, so we're going to try and get ourselves out there as much as possible, which I can only praise, and the amount of effort and creativity that's going on is clearly a good thing. However, we get asked a lot, how do I know what's working? How do we know what's not working? How do we know what to put time in? And how do we make sure we're not wasting our time? The first thing I'd say is, as Kevin said, really, is a lot of the stuff that's being put out, too much of it is salesy. Too much of it is, this is who we are, and this is what we've got to sell. And that will work to an extent, but it's not going to build you a kind of sustainable long-term audience that you can have a relationship with in many years to come, hopefully. So what we tend to tell clients is that content can fall into one or two categories. It can either be entertaining or it can be useful. And entertaining is really hard. Useful is a lot easier. Entertaining is very hard, as you might be able to tell from my presentation so far. But being useful is a lot easier, and you can kind of work it out through trial and error. One of the approaches is to use the analytics, as Stuart has mentioned. Keep trying things, notice when something starts working, do more of it. When we work with a client, we tend to say, focus on your website first, get the content sorted for landing pages, blogs, and then think about how you're going to distribute that content, whether that's through social media, email, or PR. So to begin with, the best advice I can give about where you start with what your content plan is going to look like, what your content strategy is going to look like, is think of the questions that your customers ask you. Think of the questions that your customers are asking when they are buying products like yours, when they're buying from competitors, and try and answer them the best you can and in the most depth that you can. So one of the common ways to do this is through what's called keyword research. I haven't got time to give a sort of in-depth explanation of how to do SEO keyword research, but a really simple trick is to Google something that you think a customer might ask when they come to you or come to a competitor. And then if you scroll to the bottom, well, first of all, you're going to see all of the returns of other companies that have attempted to answer that question, and you try and do a better job of it, basically, or you try and do a localized version of it in your space. Right at the bottom, Google then suggests other questions that other people often answer. That's like normally a ready-made content strategy for 6 more things that you could be writing about. So say I am not ashamed to say that the other day I Googled what's the cheapest and best hot tub I can buy in Plymouth, because I keep seeing pictures of my mates in hot tubs that they've invested in. And if you go to the bottom, it then says, what's the cheapest and best insert brand hot tub that I can get at the moment? When is the best time to buy a hot tub? How much does it cost to install a hot tub? If I was in the hot tub business, that is the kind of content I would be creating. And that's the sort of content that people would then find through Google, hopefully on my site. I would certainly be confident that if I started putting that content out on social media, that it would engage people, because I've kind of proved already that people are asking those sort of questions. So if you follow that strategy, basically your social's got a better chance of working. I can't guarantee that it's going to work, but it's got a better chance. So you've started creating content like this on your site. You've done it through blogs, or you've created a sort of whole new landing page around a topic or something like that. You then start putting it out on social, and you start to see that people are engaging with you, and you're following some of Kevin's advice around when to stop and how to engage and that kind of thing. The next thing to think about is then how do we capture this information through about the people that are engaging with our content? We can see that people are interested and they're reading. What do we then do with that data? So the first thing I tell every client we start working with is, if you don't have a newsletter, start a newsletter. Have an email sign up on your website and drive people towards it through your content. Make sure that it's on everything that you write. Stuart, are you saying 1 minute, Paul, please? Oh, I think that might have been a message from earlier, sorry. If you keep driving people towards that email list, that is data that you own. So you don't own your Facebook audience. Facebook could change their algorithm and make it a lot harder for you to engage with people. If you have a YouTube channel, one day YouTube could change the rules. With your email list, that is yours, and that is yours to keep. That's your data. And you can communicate with those customers wherever you wish, within reason. So that's my number 1 recommendation when it comes to capturing data. The other thing to do is to think about your contact form on your website and how intelligently you're using it. Do you have different contact forms for different services, if appropriate? Do you have different kind of customers? And can you put those contact forms on the content that is relevant to those customers? Can you use the information that comes through your contact form to better equip your sales teams? Can you tell your sales team, this person contacted us and they read this article, they read that article, they came via Facebook, which shows that they interacted with this video. Can you tell your sales team that, so that when they call the customer, they've got a much better chance of knowing what that customer wants and the sort of money that they might be willing to pay for your services? The final thing, which is the sort of slightly more ambitious thing, is you're creating this content regularly. You're doing all the things that I've recommended. it's good to think of like one super duper piece of content that we would call a lead magnet in marketing jargon, that can sit behind an email sign up that's of like genuinely high value to your audience. So in the hot tub industry, it might be the 7-point guide to making sure your hot tub never breaks down or something like that. And someone has to sign up for that, sign up to your email newsletter in order to access it. It means you're much more likely to try and get that kind of valuable data that you need. When you've got your list, the next thing then is to, 30 seconds, don't worry, this is the last point, Stuart, is to then start sending emails to people. Do it more often than you think. Do it, if you want to do it weekly, then do it weekly. Just don't do it more often than weekly, otherwise you're going to get annoying. And then every now and again, send to your audience a sales email. It might be every 4 emails, so you're doing it once a week. The 4th one might be a sales email about a new product or something like that. That, I think, is all I'm going to be allowed time for.
Sorry, Paul. Yeah, it's difficult. It's such a broad subject and so much interest there. It was interesting you were talking about the success of marketing and not. There's that famous adage that half of your marketing budget is wasted, if only you knew which half, because sometimes you just don't know which bits are successful and which aren't. But I think very true about making sure that the content is either interesting and engaging or useful. We made a point at the very start of lockdown that chamber events would add value, otherwise we wouldn't do them, because we could see that very quickly it was going to be a space filled with people doing online networking, which is fine, but we would rather that the events added value. So hopefully you're finding this very valuable. Keep thinking of questions. We've got 1 or 2 come in on the chat. But before we go to those, I'll hand over to Alexis for 5 minutes. He's going to talk to us specifically about presentation.
Thanks, Stuart, very much. Hello, everybody. For those of you I haven't met, you may have seen me before many moons ago on ITV. So I spent about 15 years in a television newsroom, made all sorts of mistakes and learned from them. I'm just going to give you a quick crash course on some useful things that you might find particularly useful because you're using Zoom at the moment. Now, some of you may have noticed that I am sitting in front of the Tamar Bridge. I'm not. You have fantastic facilities on these Zoom things to change the location that you're in if you so wish, and also to promote your feelings, emotions, and your businesses. So, for example, I like to pretend on a day like today that I'm in Plymouth, because that would be a lovely place to be. However, if you want to be a la politicians and be witty and erudite, you could always substitute an incredibly fun background such as that. And if you find that picture on the internet, you will be able to notice that it's actually spelling out a rather witty bit of repartee there. Alternatively, you can give people a inspirational moment throughout your meetings, or you can move into a completely different state of affairs. Now, these things are really, really useful if, like me, you've tried to squeeze into a place in your house and are trying to disguise the fact that you're actually broadcasting from the spare bedroom, which none of us want to do, because, of course, we've all managed to be really, really organised and get ourselves sorted with a virtual office in our house. So what you should be seeing is me back in Plymouth now, hopefully. I hope all of you saw that little run around that I gave you there, but it is just a really good example. And for those of you running businesses, get your logo behind you as quickly as you can, like Stuart has done, because then it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, you're consistently, consciously and subliminally promoting your business. So I'm just going to take you through another couple of things, do's and don'ts. First of all, with your laptop or your computer, push it back, okay? Don't loom over it like this, because you're just looming over people, and people do tend to feel a bit uncomfortable. I know that this is how you actually do your typing, but it's not how you converse with people in a normal way. Socially distance yourself from your laptop when you're on Zoom meetings. That's the best thing I can advise you. And this is another lovely moment that I'm going to provide you with. Come with me, ladies and gentlemen. So, actually lift up your computer or your laptop and find yourself some natural light. So, look what's just happened. Can you see? Can anyone see? Has this just knocked 20 years off me? Is everyone much happier and more comfortable because I'm not in your face? I'm back here. And also you can see what I'm doing and what I'm trying to say to you. I'm much more relaxed. We're conversing. I'm not in some black hole. Other top tips for those of you who are going to be, who use glasses, when you're actually talking to somebody, if you can, take them off. People feel much more relaxed if they can actually see the whole of your face. You know, if you're, if you can choose to have different presentation styles for different conversations that you're having. Here we're having a relatively serious chamber conversation. So, you know, we're all looking quite serious. We're in shirts. I'm in a sensible jumper. But you can mix it up. You can change it up. Take the jumper off, and suddenly we're on the beach, or we're having much more fun. Don't go around thinking that you have to do sort of crazy suits and ties all over the place, because we're in a relaxed lockdown situation, which means you are allowed to be relaxed. But stick to those basics, all right? Ladies, don't go for crazy earrings. Don't go for crazy necklaces. Don't distract people from what you're saying with stuff that's going to be sparkly or, you know, or shaking around anywhere. Gentlemen, don't go wearing something really quite mad. Don't go for a bright yellow tie. Don't go for stripes. Don't go for checks, because suddenly you're going to find that those are going to be strobing all over the place. And it doesn't matter whether you're on Zoom. It doesn't matter whether you're on a stage. It doesn't matter where you are. Your most important thing that you're going to be doing to your audience and the people that you're communicating with is to remove all barriers to communication. You want them to be looking you in the eye and listening to what you have to say. So that's my crash course. I think Stuart's starting to raise his eyebrows ever so slightly. That is my crash course. Those are my gifts that I can give you today. And if it's just that you just need to back off a little bit, socially distance yourself from the people that you're talking to, e.g. your laptop, get yourself into some natural light. It's literally, I'm just by the window. Can you see? I hope you can. I've just moved onto a windowsill here, and that is what has done this. And you can do that too. So all of you can do it now. If you're anywhere near a window and you're on a laptop, just turn and face the window and look at yourself on Zoom. Oh, look, that's so cool. Look at Fiona. Hello. Oh, hello, Catherine. That's very lovely. Jackie's done it as well.
Very lovely.
Can you see the difference?
Lovely. Well, I say you're all looking very lovely. Then there's Steve Warren Brown there, of course, who's wearing a striped shirt that's strobing, and you know, he's got a window, and you know, what were you thinking with the colour of that wall? No, sorry, it's very, very rude. Thank you, Alexis. I wondered where you were going when you took your top off there. That's a completely different presentation. We had, I should remind you all that we've got an event actually coming up about how to use the advanced features of Zoom and also Microsoft Teams, because Teams isn't, I don't think, as easy or as intuitive to use. So have a look on our website and book yourself onto that event. This will show you the advanced features of Zoom, like meeting rooms and breakout rooms and so forth, polls, and also MS Teams, which I'm still not entirely sure about. I can't get to grips with MS Teams at all, so I'm going to do that particular presentation myself. So thank you, Alexa. I know that had to be a real whistle stop, but I did find it not only interesting and helpful, but also good fun. So thank you for that. So we got some questions coming in on the chat, and one in particular, if I can find it, was from Sophie Short, which I'll ask, perhaps start off with Paul, because it relates mostly to social media, but any of the other panelists, please come in. It says, Kevin mentioned about social media scheduling. On another webinar I took part in last week, the presenters from digital agencies said this might not be a good tactic at this time due to the fast changing circumstances. What would you say about this? In fact, she said that to Kevin. So sorry, Kevin, you answer that first, but Paul, you might want to come in on that afterwards.
Yeah, thank you. I perfectly understand what the guys from digital agencies were talking about, and I wouldn't rely on planned content if that was the only content that you were doing. I think you've got to leave room for being able to do stuff tactically, on the hoof, on the spur of the moment, day by day, so on. What planning your content really does gives you an overview of a week or 2 weeks. Of what your content is going to say, and does it really reflect your key messages? Does it really, is it really consistent with your brand and what it is that you want to say about your business? Like I say, I wouldn't do that for all of your content. The whole point about planning your content is you then don't really have to think about that strategic key message based content day by day. If all you do is wait until let's say tomorrow morning, I'll wake up and I'll get up and then I'll think, oh, what content am I going to do today on my social media? I kind of think you're going to end up putting it to the bottom of the pile, not quite getting around to it, or doing it in a rush when without really thinking properly about it. So I am a big advocate of planning some of your content, which frees you up to then be able to spend a bit of time for those things that just happen to pop up and that you can deal with at the time. In addition, if you use something like Hootsuite, if something has happened, if something's changed in the environment for you to make some of the content that you've planned not be relevant for that day, you can easily go in and change it. Just move it to another day, delete it, replace it, whatever. But at least if you've got it planned, you've got it there and you've got some consistency.
Thank you, Kevin. Paul, have you got any thoughts on that?
Much the same as what Kevin said, really. If you don't schedule your social media content, it will inevitably suffer, whether it's for tone or brand consistency, that kind of thing, like Kevin was talking about. I find personally that if you batch together your time for creating social content, you're going to be finding yourself in a far more creative space if you spend 2 hours doing a fortnight's worth, say, rather than trying to spend 5 minutes every day, just like with any other task in your working week, to be honest with you. But that, like Kevin says, at the moment particularly, you do need to give yourself space just to kind of check on a daily basis that it's relevant and timely still, and that nothing has happened in the last, if you're in charge of anything to do with health comms, for instance, you're going to want to obviously check on a daily basis that it's still kind of the best thing to be putting out. I recommend to clients, and we work with a scheduling tool called Content Cow, which I would highly recommend, which makes it really easy to drag and drop content from one day to the next, and kind of save bits that you say, oh, we're not going to use this now, I might use it in a month. Gives you a nice little archive and things like that. I would highly recommend.
Thank you. Paul Philpott, I hope you don't mind me saying, but Paul highlighted something to me over the last 24, 48 hours, which Paul Burton, you may have a view on, and that was around, well, Paul, do you want to just say what you highlighted? Is that okay? You don't mind doing that?
No, not at all. Is that with reference to the Twitter meltdown in the UK?
Yeah,
it was, I don't know if anybody saw what happened, very unfortunately, best intentions, but perhaps something that wasn't thought through completely, with reference to Plymouth City Bus. And they rebranded their Pride vehicle in order to support the NHS, the congratulations for helping us out, that kind of consensus with regards to the NHS, which of course is absolutely fantastic intentions. But of course, it kind of splashed back in their face because it upset the Twittersphere over the relevance of the Pride flag not being a rainbow. City Bus saying that it was actually a rainbow, so we should therefore rebrand it for this campaign. And at the same time, whereas the intentions were 100%, 1000% genuine, it had the effect of completely casting one group of people as no longer relevant, and at the same time giving another group of people something that was secondhand. How do you go about managing that kind of instance when everything, when the actual storyline is purely genuine? It kind of comes back and bites you, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'll hand over to Paul in a moment. I should, first of all, declare an interest here in that City Bus are patrons of the Chamber, as many of you will know, and I happen to know they do an incredible amount for charity in this city. So it's such a shame when they tried to do a nice thing there and just repurpose for just a few days at the Pride bus with its rainbow to say thank you, the rainbow symbol being used by, to thank NHS workers. And it has kind of, or it did rather on Twitter, backfire in that people felt offended by that in some way. But
it had, I think it's currently at 1,200 comments.
I suppose it raised their profile.
Yeah, it was front page of The Independent on Sunday. The other issue was unfortunately released on the International Day Against Homophobia, which perhaps didn't help things easier.
Scheduling, yes. Paul, Burton, what do you think about that?
Well, there's never an easy answer to something like that. Once it starts to spiral out of control, it's not, the first step really is to kind of understand and accept really that you're not going to be able to control what every single person on the internet is saying, no matter how extreme the comments might have been taken. The thing I always recommend is to deal with it well and deal with it, and to deal with it well, you can't deal with it 10 minutes after it blows up. You're going to need some time to think about it. You're going to need to reassure people that their complaints have been heard, but you kind of need to deal with it well and deal with it once, if that makes sense, rather than get wrapped into 100 different conversations with thousands of different Twitter people. As I think I understand it, in this case, they kind of have done that now. Maybe not. It's kind of unfortunate that it blew up over the weekend, which is kind of, I can guarantee you, if you ever get caught into a social media storm, it will happen on a Sunday morning when you've got no staff on. So that you kind of have to take that on the chin, I suppose. But as I understand it, the plan was always to put the bus back to being a Pride bus in like a month or whenever. I think Pride is in August, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess it probably won't take place this year anyway. I'm not sure. I can't offer any. I presume that it's possibly going to be postponed or whatever. But City Bus have always been, well, I think they were headline sponsors last year. So I think they've been able to say, look, the plan was always to take it back. We apologise, we didn't communicate it particularly well. We apologise for that. But we are huge supporters of the Pride movement in the local area. You've kind of said all you need to say it strongly across all your channels, draw a line under it. Tomorrow, it'll be back to complaints about the number 62 being late.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you said what you said, because that's exactly what they did do. And Mark Collins went on and said, we were the headline sponsor of Pride. We take nothing away from them, and how you feel for them when they've seen their demand fall off a cliff at the same time that they're being told that they have to supply services because of essential workers getting to and from work. So they're running at a massive loss in difficult circumstances. They try and do a nice thing and it bites them on the backside. But I think they handled it really well. I didn't want to raise a thorny issue at a time when we're trying to sort of encourage people to use social media and to market themselves out of this issue. You shouldn't be frightened of it. As Alexis said, we make mistakes, but it's how you handle them. And I think they handled it really well. I think most people would go, oh, fair enough. It's very, very hard to have a go at someone who's putting their hands up. I remember on Question Time years ago, Peter Hain was asked by a member of the audience really vociferously and was told that when you were the education minister, you backed this campaign by a chocolate company that if people bought enough chocolate bars, they got tokens and that would buy goalposts. But the media soon worked out that for a child to get a set of goalposts at the school, they need to eat 10,000 Mars bars and all be obese or something. So how could you possibly justify that? And everyone cheered and applauded. Yeah, it's terrible. And he said, oh, I can't justify it at all. He said, it was an awful decision. I'm really, really sorry. We were an organisation under a lot of pressure. Somebody offered something that looked like a good solution. We didn't look into it well enough. We withdrew it as soon as we could. And you're quite right. It was a terrible decision. And everyone just sort of went, oh, okay. What can you say to someone who's saying, yeah, I'm sorry, I made a bit of a mistake? Anyway, I'm really aware that time has rushed by. I'm so sorry that we're going to have to start drawing this to a close. I'm able to take one more question, but while we're thinking of it, I think David Birch, you've messaged me, you might have something to add of value to Chamber members there. So David, do you want to just come in there?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Stuart. I will keep this brief. Obviously, my name's Dave Birch. I'm the digital specialist for Reach, head of business. Now, with being the Chamber's media partners, what I have been doing a lot recently with a number of Chamber members is really helping them to understand how their customers engage with them on the different platforms that they promote themselves on. So some really great valid points made by all of our presenters today. But this is for all the Chamber members, really. What I've been doing is a free, no obligation digital health check. And that is obviously available to all of our members and non-members as well, just to really understand how your customers are engaging with you and how the changes are made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email address in the group chat. And if anybody wants to explore it, just to understand their customers a little bit better, and I can give you some ideas and obviously establish what your needs are really. But I don't want to make it too much a plug about what we can do as a business. It's more about us all grouping together, understanding our audience and moving forward. And then when we finally do get out of this, building those relationships that, you know, will last forever. So
Thank
I'll put those in.
Yeah, and put your contact details in the chat now, because we've only got a minute or two and then we're going to close. So do that straight away. David has done a similar job for us and looked at our online presence, and we got great value out of that. So thank you very much. Any questions? I'm just looking down the list there. Anyone going to put their hand up? Anyone got any questions, comments, observations? No. So I will wrap up by just saying, don't forget that we need real world examples of what you need from your businesses to be able to safely get back to work. And also what else you want us to campaign on. So it's really important. And good news stories too, where you might be able to share some best practice, and we'll put that out in our various channels. So thank you very much, Alexis, Paul, Kevin, for giving us some of your insight. I mean, I'm sorry it was a whistle-stop tour, but there was lots there and really interesting and exciting. Thank you all for joining us. Please do use the social media hashtag #ChamberLive. I'm going to do this rare thing of actually unmuting all, and if we could perhaps, as we say goodbye, thank our speakers, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you very much. Thank you all.